Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. All right, so we ended the last video, talking about Avalokitesvara as the regarder of the cries of the world, being a personification of our innate ability, because we have innate Buddhahood, therefore we have innate Bodhisattva, and our innate ability to be really good listeners, not just to the words people say, but their meanings, because the words are mutable. But can you have a really good, compassionate, empathetic ear so that you can see through the rhetoric to the sources of suffering, the sources of pain, the sources of anxiety, the sources of stress? This is what makes us good, compassionate listeners who can then, because of those insights, offer useful guidance. And our guidance always is toward self-realization, attaining Buddhahood. But not everyone's at the same place. And I don't mean just study. It's not like school. It's like, well, in a way, let's go ahead with the school analogy, but you are your own school. There's no authority other than you here. This is one of the biggest revolutions of Shakyamuni's teaching in ancient India, and it still holds true today. This is something that religion simply avoids altogether. They don't want you to feel as though you can direct your life. Religions want to, replace, append. They want to remove your sense of self-responsibility so that you answer to an authority. That's the most authoritarian methodology of governing people that still today, it threatens every democratic thinking institution, right? It doesn't matter what you think, we've got you. Really? I mean, really, think about that. You really think that somebody who even doesn't even know you, let alone family members, how many rows have you had with family members? Nobody knows you like you do, and you're still figuring it out, and that's what I'm pointing out. As we live in the Saha world, dominated by our samsaric mind, our true nature is obfuscated. And we find ourselves thinking, what's wrong with me? How can I don't know this. I have no guidance. I don't know what to do. And that's the first tripwire to send you in the arms of authoritarians. And Shakyamuni comes out and says, no. Remember karma? Yeah, in ancient India, karma was something handed to you by the upper class. Still is. Brahmins will schedule an appointment to come to your home and dole out karma to each family member, because you're never going to be out of this caste that you fit in, and therefore, let's see, you'll be a cobbler, and you'll be like your father and his father before him, and blah, 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 and you, so on and so forth. Oh, and you marry him so that we can put those two things together, right? It's all socioeconomics in the hands of authoritarians. So here comes Shakyamuni. He says, no. Karma is something you manage every moment of every day. Moment to moment to moment to moment. This cycle that you're going through. It's yours. You manage it. You alter it. You shove it this way. You influence it that way. Well, now you can understand why a lot of authoritarians in Shakyamuni's day thought, we need to shut that guy up. He's making waves. He's going to make it harder for us to control people and tell them what to think. Yes, see, Buddhism was very, very revolutionary. And still today. I mean, I lived through the 60s upheavals with the students and so forth. And I saw education change overnight. Yeah, because those in power don't want students, to be that smart and that insightful to question what they're doing. We're still seeing it today. Except now we have huge swaths of the population willfully throwing themselves at the feet of anyone who says, I'll tell you what to do. We're at a crisis point, and this is obviously the age of Mappo. And obviously not any different than what was going on in Nichiren's day. This is what Nichiren was dealing with. These sects calling themselves Buddhism, really just aligning and changing and altering Buddhist teachings to suit a political agenda, a one-upmanship agenda. Oh, don't go to their temple. They don't know the true Buddhist teachings, right? The Pure Land Sutras and teachers, right? The Nembutsu. All divided, claiming some superiority with one another. Japan is still that way today. There's still many sects in Japan. And I've written books about it. I've talked about it ad nauseum. So here's a core. Again, these later chapters in the Lotus focus in on one skill set. Regarder of cries of the world is your innate ability to hear with compassion the needs of somebody. And when the needs are always, how do I get to enlightenment? They may not know that, but that's their need. That's the answer. So, infinite thought. This Bodhisattva called infinite thought. Obviously, infinite thought is all our sentient minds, isn't it? Infinite thought. Such are the merits acquired by this Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world, and the various forms in which he rambles through many lands to liberate the living. Remember, lands are mental landscapes, right? We go from our samsaric mental landscape in the Saha world, and without changing the Saha world, we push out the samsaric landscape and usher in the Buddha landscape. It's a mental shift, a cognitive paradigm shift, right? Therefore, do you, very next paragraph, therefore do you with single mind pay homage to the Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world. This Bodhisattva Mahasattva, regarder of the cries of the world, is able to make fearless those in anxiety and distress. For this reason, all in this Saha world give him the title bestower of fearlessness. Because when you know enlightenment is simply in your control, that you can instantiate it and train yourself to stay in it, then there's nothing to be afraid of. The Bodhisattva Infinite Thought said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, let me now make an offering to the Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world." Thereupon he unloosed from his neck a necklace of jewels worth hundreds of thousands of pieces of gold and presented it to him, making this remark, "Good sir, accept this pious gift of jewel necklace." Well, that's material, isn't it? So what do you think is going to happen next? Because, money, all the jewels in the world, they don't bring happiness. Their worth is secular. It's saha. And attachment to worth is worse. It's samsaric. So why this? Why is this happening? Pay attention. This is going to be another example that Nichiren seizes upon and uses throughout his writings. See if you can pick up on it before I explain it. But the Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world, would not accept it. Again, the Bodhisattva Infinite Thought addressed the Bodhisattva Regarder of the Cries of the World. Good sir, out of compassion for us, accept this necklace. Wow, what a twisted thing to say. Then the Buddha said to the Bodhisattva Regarder of the Cries of the World, out of compassion for this Bodhisattva Infinite Thought, he doesn't know any better, and for the four groups, bhikshunis, bhikshus, upasakas, upasikas, right? And for the universal realms of influence, dragons, yakshas, gandharvas, the whole list, human and non-human beings, and others, go ahead and accept this necklace. Just make it not about the necklace. Just make it about accepting this gift that obviously Infinite Thought is still samsarically attached to and has value. Just give him that for the moment. Then Bodhisattva, Regarder of the Cries of the World, having compassion for all the four groups and the universal realms of influence, dragons, blah, 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 accepted the necklace and immediately divided it into two parts. He broke the necklace, divided it into two parts. And he offered one part to Shakyamuni Buddha and offered the other to the stupa of the Buddha Abundant Treasures. Are you paying attention? What do you think just happened? Let me give you a clue, and I annotated it here. Why is that underlined? Okay. Many of Nichiren's writings begin with the dedication of gifts, supplies, and support received, and then offered directly to Gohonzon. Right? You recognize that? Nichiren does this in every letter of response to followers, monks, senior monks, senior officials, Shijokingo, the samurai. In fact, most of his followers were samurai. Interesting note. Every time he gets anything, whether it's a robe or some seaweed or anything to help him subsist, he recognizes that that gift is not for him, Nichiren's body. It's for he, Nichiren's teaching, that he is the envoy of the teaching, just as you and I are. And that any support received, whether it's food or clothing or candles or incense or just money, all of that is directly an effort to support the propagation of Namo Myoho Renge-kyo. It's not about Nichiren. He knows this, and that's the first thing he says in the letter. I took your gifts and offered them immediately to Gohonzon. Once I established the proper order of honoring this support, then I can partake of it so that I can further honor the support. So what does Avalokitesvara do? He accepts the gift because Shakyamuni tells him to. Remember, Shakyamuni's on this mandala behind me. And immediately splits it in two, and he gives it half to Shakyamuni and half to who? Tahoe Buddha, the one in the treasure tower, also on this mandala. Tell me Nichiren wasn't taking notes. Offered to Buddha, to Tathagata, to the one purpose of ending samsaric cravings and clinging, to live a full life of potential without obstacle. That's the symbolism of rightfully thinking, understanding the subsistence to propagate. This, the only reason we're here on this planet is to observe with awe the making of the cosmos through our sentience. Everything else is just baubles. It's lava coming out of the volcano. It's just stuff. It's all empty. It's all impermanent. It's all, you need more? Infinite thought. With such sovereign supernatural powers does the Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world, wander through the Saha world. Are you starting to understand now? Then the Bodhisattva Infinite Thought made inquiry thus in verse. The world-honored one with all the priori signs, let me now again inquire of him, for what cause is this Buddha son named regarder of the cries of the world? He hasn't quite gotten it yet, right? In fact, he just responded to a cry from Infinite Thought, and Infinite Thought doesn't understand that his whole thing with the necklace was a cry to Avalokitesvara. That he still doesn't understand that the value of the necklace is irrelevant. But if it has a heart tendril, emotional attachment to it, by accepting it, he can take it, he's expiating it from Infinite Thought. He's doing a bodhisattva act, and especially so by not accepting it for himself. The only value it has is by offering it to Buddha and Tahoe, Shakyamuni and Tahoe Buddhas. What does that resemble, that whole interaction? I wonder. Think about that. Isn't that exactly what we do when we sit in front of our Butsudan and chant to Namo Myoho Renge Kyo with Shakyamuni and Tahoe looking down upon us as we invoke the treasure tower? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Are we not offering our homage, our respect to the Buddhas that they then reflect with our Gohanzan mind the opening of the Buddha eye, which is what we're after all along. The honored one, with all the priori signs, responded to Infinite Thought in verse. Listen to the deeds of the cry regarder, who well responds to every quarter. His vast vow is deep as the sea, inconceivable in its eons, because it's a feature of all life, right? Let me briefly tell you, he who bears his name and sees him and bears him unremittingly in mind. Do you need a more clear explanation that this is a mental facility? Will be able to end the sorrows of existence. It's our Bodhisattva mission. Avalokitesvara is compassion. I make a note here, sorrows created by samsaric cravings and clinging. This is about steadfast resolve in practice, propagation, and comportment. Though others, with harmful intent, throw him into a burning pit, let him think of the cry regarder's power, and the fire pit will become a pool. Or driven, again, this is a paradigm shift in the mind. There's no magic here of fire turning to water. It's not water into wine. Or driven along a great ocean in peril of dragons, fishes, and demons, let him think of the cry of the regarder's power, and waves cannot submerge him. Right? With that attitude of compassion, one can overcome Mara. Or if from the peak of Sumeru, the great mountain Sumeru, men would hurl him down, let him think of the cry regarder's power, and like the sun, he will stand firm in the sky. Another note from me. As an exemplar to all he would encounter, Nichiren's humility kept him from claiming Avalokitesvara as his model for practice and propagation. However, Nichiren certainly understood his life as an exemplar for all future generations. Nichiren tells us to emulate his life in practice, to keep our mind in singular focus of our best nature of Buddhahood is all that is required. So Nichiren's lessons are mirroring this lesson. But as there are already cults of Avalokitesvara, he doesn't want to step on any of that. He identifies with one of the four leaders of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, you and I, because it's more secular. It's more social and secular. Does that make sense? And Nichiren understands that he's just yet another envoy of the Lotus Sutra Buddhist teaching. He's not some, what is in his day, maybe still today, seen as some kind of supernatural, spiritual entity power, right? Not that. There's no magic here, but it sounds like it. So people are people, right? Moving on. Or if pursued by wicked men and cast down from Mount Diamond, he thinks of the cry regarder's power, not a hair shall be injured. It's attitude and intent, attitude and intent. It's throughout this whole thing. Or if meeting with encompassing foes, each with sword drawn to strike him, he thinks of the Avalokitesvara and the power of compassion, right? That's what that means. All their hearts will turn to kindness. I can tell you I've experienced that, not with swords, but with guns in my face. 3 times. 3 times I should be dead. And for some reason, my immediate thought was, what's wrong? What can I do for you? What's going on? Let's talk. I mean, sincerely. Kind of surprises me, right? And every time, those that would put me down, and I mean touching my nose, gun, whether it was a pistol, a revolver, and the second time, a shotgun. And they just went away. So this has personal resonance for me. Now, you may not have had that dramatic of an experience, but live long enough, you probably will. But I'm sure you can relate. Right? Maybe it was that time you almost fell off the roof when you were helping somebody re-roof or whatever. It doesn't have to be a gun. It's just the threat of death is imminent. And the thought passes through you that you somehow want to contribute. It will save your life. See, it's not mystical. It may feel like it, may seem like it. It is the rhythm, the momentum, the energy of your life interplaying with the energy, the life around you. This is the core of Buddhism. Or if meeting suffering by royal command, his life is to end in execution, as Nichiren's was, and he thinks of the cry regarder's power, the executioner's sword will break into pieces. Well, that's not what happened at Tatsunokuchi, but it may as well have. Some heavenly event, whether it was a comet or an eclipse, or people are divided on what happened, but something huge happened that rattled everybody at that execution. And he was set free and later exiled because nobody seemed able to kill him. What a thought. The compassionate Nichiren. tell me he wasn't channeling Avalokitesvara that day. Or if imprisoned, shackled, and chained. Sound like anyone we know? Arms and legs in gyves and stocks. He thinks of cry, regard his power. Freely he shall be released. Once again. And this is thousands of years before Nichiren. Keep that in mind. Or if meeting deluded and malicious rakshasas, venomous dragons and demons, all kinds of terrible influences, yes. At once none will dare to hurt him. If encompassed by deluded and malicious beasts, tusks sharp and claws fearful, he thinks of the cry regarder's power. They will flee in every direction. Don't leave him alone. If scorched by the fire flame, and I've had experience with mad dogs and things of that nature, a rabid animal, what was that? It was a raccoon. Got up on its hind legs, hissing at me and everything. Anyway, this isn't about me. I just want you to know, this is real stuff. This isn't made up fairy tales, fables. These teachings are of actual function. That's why Buddhism is no religion. It's just teaching us the power of our thoughts, our attitude and intent. I'm going to make you sick of hearing that, aren't I? Where are we time-wise? Yeah, we're doing great. If scorched by the fire flame of the poisonous breath of boas, vipers, and scorpions, he thinks of Avalokitesvara's power. Instantly, at his voice, they will retreat. Clouds, thunder, and lightnings, flashes, hail, falls, and rain streams. He thinks of the cry regarder's power, and instantly all are scattered. The living crushed and harassed, oppressed by countless pains, the cry of the world, the cry regarder, with his a priori wisdom, can liberate such a suffering world. There it is. Compassion trumps suffering. Samsara. This is a huge component of Lotus Bodhisattva work, yes? How do we cultivate that compassion? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Awaken that Buddha mind. The compassion will simply manifest and trickle through every karmic flow that is in your momentum. No one can do that for you. It's all on you. And therefore, wonderfully, that means you control it. If it doesn't seem to be accomplishing what you think it should be, look at yourself. Double down. You're going through something, right? We don't know the nooks and crannies of our karma that have really ugly crud in it. But it'll present itself, and when it does, you better be ready. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Buddhize that thing. You understand? As such, Avalokitesvara is the embodiment of the universal Tathagata, the engine of life. Perfect and supernatural powers, widely practiced in wisdom and tact, in the lands of the universe, there is no place where he does not manifest himself. Well, there you are, engine of life. All the deluded and malicious states of experience, hells, ghosts, animals, sorrows of birth, age, disease, death, all by degrees are ended by him. You see, it doesn't happen instantaneously. All by degrees are ended by him. Him being compassion. True regard, serene regard, far-reaching wise regard, regard of pity, compassionate regard, ever longed for, ever looked for. Pure and serene in radiance, wisdom's sun-destroying darkness, subduer of woes, of storm and fire, who illumines all the world. Law of pity, thunder quivering, compassion wondrous, as a great cloud pouring spiritual rain like nectar, quenching the flames of distress. In disputes before a magistrate, or in fear in battle's array, if he thinks of the cry regarder's power, all his enemies will be routed. His is the wondrous voice, voice of the world regarder, Brahma voice, voice of the rolling tide, voice all worlds surpassing, therefore, ever to be kept in mind with never a doubting thought. Regarder of the world's cries, pure and revered, in pain, distress, death, calamity, able to be a sure reliance, perfect in all merit, with compassionate eyes beholding all, boundless ocean of merits. Prostrate, and let us revere him. Thereupon the Bodhisattva stageholder rose from his seat and went before and said to the Buddha, World-honored one, if any living being hears of this sovereign work and the all-sided transcendent powers shown in this chapter of the Bodhisattva, regarder of the cries of the world, it should be known that the merits of this man are not few. King of understatement. While the Buddha taught this chapter of the mutable one, why is he mutable? Because he suits every situation. Our compassion doesn't know a definition. It simply knows application, right? The 84,000 living beings in the assembly all set their minds upon complete and perfect enlightenment with which nothing can compare. So I have a final note on this chapter before we move on to chapter 26. Hyperbole aside, this is a chapter of strong encouragement to take heed of our awareness and mindful of our attitude and intent throughout our days. The strong exhortation to remain vigilant in practice and propagation can also not be missed. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Not a mere repetition, a different angle at coming at Bodhisattva work, yeah? A reminder that as we chant, as we walk away from our altar on our Butsudan, that the world is filled with Buddha-ness, that Tathagata-ness has produced this world. Amazing as it is in all of its forms, from bright to dark, whatever, if we experience life with compassion, then life will bear fruit for our experience. It's a call-response thing. Just like invoking Buddhahood is a call-response. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo, call. Myoho Renge Kyo, response. I hope that inspires your day. I hope you find some insight and aspiration in this chapter, yeah? In the meantime, I am so grateful for your support, whether it simply be liking and subscribing, or the bookstore, the mandala store, or patrons on Patreon and PayPal. You guys make this possible, so the whole Sangha bids you a bow of appreciation. All of you, universal worthy bodhisattvas. We'll get to that chapter. All right, I'm going to let you go. Let me go. Take care of your health. Keep your practice strong. That's the main thing, yes? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.